SG Polymers was the company in which this incident has occurred. So with respect to this issue, as we all are aware of this issue, with respect to prelims, we need to know some 2 to 3 issues about this gas leak. First is, what is this styrene? That is important, right? So the gas leak was related to styrene, right? It was also called styrene gas leak. So we need to know some properties about this styrene. So firstly, this styrene is basically an organic compound that is used for manufacturing of plastics, right? It's an organic compound that is used for manufacturing of plastics and polymers. That's the first point. And this styrene is basically a carcinogenic substance. Carcinogenic means cancer causing substance. And also an important feature about this styrene is this is basically a liquid and not a gas, right? That we have to know. This is basically a colorless liquid, but not a gas, right? So styrene is basically a colorless liquid. When it comes to contact with atmosphere, then it reacts with oxygen, the atmospheric oxygen, to become styrene dioxide, right? So that is the gas. So basically styrene, which is used as an organic compound in polymers and plastics, is basically a colorless liquid, right? It's not a gas, and that reacts with oxygen to form styrene dioxide, right? Now that styrene dioxide is the gas, and this is usually stored at low temperatures in the range of 15 to 20 degrees Celsius. You have to know this point also. It's usually stored at temperatures 15 degrees Celsius to 20 degrees Celsius. If this styrene is exposed to higher temperatures, then auto-polymerization will take place, right? If this styrene is exposed to higher temperature, auto-polymerization will take place, which is also an exothermic reaction, right? There is high risk. So that's why this should be stored at low temperatures, 15 degrees to 20 degrees Celsius. And prolonged exposure to styrene, that means exposure to styrene for a long period of time, will damage the central nervous system of humans. It will damage the central nervous system of the humans, because of which people can get into coma also, right? We have seen, unfortunately, some lives were lost because of this gas leak at Vizag, right? So this is about styrene gas. And then with respect to such similar chemical accidents, we need to know some 2 to 3 terms, right? Before this also, Bhopal Gas Tragedy happened, right? We all know about Bhopal Gas Tragedy. Similarly, many chemical accidents have taken place in India, right? So liability is something which is imposed on the companies. Liability means it is the responsibility of the particular company, right? This is called liability. Now there are 3 types of liability. First is strict liability, right? First one is strict liability, STRICT, strict liability. Strict liability means company is not responsible for such gas incidents or for such chemical incidents if that incident happened because of act of God or by accident, right? If any disaster happens in industries because of act of God or accidentally, then the company is not responsible. This is called strict liability, right? This is called strict liability. That means company usually is responsible for the accidents that take place. However, if a particular hazardous incident took place by act of God means by some natural disasters, right? If something happened in an industry because of natural disasters or because of accident, then the company is not responsible. This is called strict liability, right? The second thing is absolute liability. What is the difference between strict liability and absolute liability? Absolute liability means industry has absolute duty and responsibility to ensure no harm is done to the workers and the people. Absolute, the name itself says absolute liability means industry has absolute duty and responsibility to ensure no harm is done to anyone, right? So absolute liability is a broader term and it is a broader thing compared to strict liability, right? So this is called absolute liability, and there is also another liability called no fault liability. No fault liability, right? No fault liability means company can be held liable even if it had done everything it can do to prevent an accident, right? For example, assume a particular company has done entirely what all it has to do. It has taken the safety precautions. It has followed SOP, standard operating procedure was followed. Emergency provisions were also incorporated in the particular industry, right? All the efforts were taken, but still the disaster happened. Then also the company is responsible under this no fault liability, right? So these are three liabilities we have to know. What is strict liability? If anything happened because of act of God or by accident, then the company is not responsible. This is strict liability. Absolute liability means industry has absolute duty and responsibility to ensure no one is harmed because of that particular industry. No fault liability means even though the company has taken all possible efforts to prevent an accident, but still if the accident happens, then also the company is liable. This is called no fault liability, right? These three are important, guys. And now another important judgment is also useful or important for prelims. It is MC Mehta versus Union of India, right? MC Mehta versus Union of India. This case was important because in this particular case, the Supreme Court has shifted from strict liability to absolute liability, right? It broadened the scope of liability, right? So it has, the Supreme Court has basically shifted its stand from strict liability to absolute liability. That means more accountability, more responsibility and more duty was kept on the companies to ensure no chemical accidents happen. This is related to MC Mehta versus Union of India. And after this gas leak incident that happened in Visakhapatnam, the National Disaster Management Authority, NDMA, has come up with some guidelines for all the other industries also. See, basically this LG Polymers gas leak happened because this was closed for a month or so because of lockdown. Because of COVID lockdown, the industry was closed. When the unlock was about to start, this industry was allowed to reopen. And when they started to initiate the manufacturing process, at that time this gas leak happened, right? So that's why National Disaster Management Authority has given guidelines to all the industries as to how some safety precautions they have to take before starting an industry, right? So NDMA guidelines, just go through them. And also just get to know or refer about Public Liability Insurance Act, right? Public Liability Insurance Act. Just find about this also. Public Liability Insurance Act, right? So this is all about gas leak at Vizag, LG Polymers gas leak, styrene, it's not a gas, it's a liquid. The gas is basically styrene dioxide. So this styrene is basically a colorless liquid, carcinogenic and used for manufacturing polymers and plastics, usually stored in 15 degrees Celsius to 20 degrees Celsius temperatures, and it affects the central nervous system if there is prolonged exposure. Strict liability, absolute liability, no fault liability, right? Find about Public Liability Insurance Act also. and MC Mehta versus Union of India. This is related to liability. At least that we have to remember. So this is about gas leak at Vizag. The second topic that we are picking up today is energy efficiency. Energy efficiency. So recently there was a report in news called Impact of Energy Efficiency Measures 2018-19, right? There was a report in news called Impact of Energy Efficiency Measures 2018-19. This report was prepared by Bureau of Energy Efficiency, BEE, right? So this report was prepared by Bureau of Energy Efficiency, BEE. Now what is this report? In this report, this particular organization called BEE, Bureau of Energy Efficiency, will try to assess, will try to evaluate all the energy efficiency schemes that were implemented by government in the year 2018-19, right? That is the objective, to evaluate the efficiency of all the government schemes related to energy efficiency in the year 2018-19. That is the objective. Now, before we get into the details of the report, first let's also get some clarity about BEE, Bureau of Energy Efficiency, right? So this is basically a statutory body under the Ministry of Power, right? Under the Ministry of Power, and the statutory body was established under the Act, Energy Conservation Act 2001. So this is about Bureau of Energy Efficiency. There is also another organization under the Ministry of Power called EESL, Energy Efficiency Services Limited. Just find out what is that body, right? EESL, whether it is a statutory body or whether it is a PSU, what is it, right? Find about EESL, because all the schemes related to energy efficiency are either implemented by Bureau of Energy Efficiency or EESL. So that's why we have to be careful what schemes are related by or implemented by B and what schemes are implemented by EESL, right? So there we have to be clear. So find about EESL, and this report talks about energy intensity. Energy intensity. Now this is an important term, right? A straightforward question can be asked about energy intensity. Energy intensity related to environment is about, and 4 options can be given. So energy intensity means quantity of energy that is required to produce 1 unit of GDP. Produce 1 unit of GDP. So this energy intensity is measured in terms of GDP, right? That we have to know, right? Energy intensity means quantity of energy that is required to produce 1 unit of GDP, right? If we are able to produce 1 unit of GDP with less energy, that means energy efficiency is more, right? If for producing 1 unit of GDP, so much energy we are consuming, that means energy efficiency is less, right? So our government is trying to improve energy efficiency through various schemes. Now this report, Impact of Energy Efficiency Measures report, has cited some important schemes that are implemented by government, right? So those schemes, I'll just list them down and briefly explain. For more depth and more details, please refer your own notes and materials, guys. So the first scheme which this report talks about is National Mission on Enhanced Energy Efficiency, NMEEE, National Mission on Enhanced Energy Efficiency. Now this is a mission under NAPCC, National Action Plan on Climate Change. You might have heard about this, NAPCC, National Action Plan on Climate Change, right? So as a part of this NAPCC, this NMEEE was set up, right? So this is first thing about which this report speaks. The second scheme is PAT scheme, PAT scheme, PAT scheme. What is this PAT? Perform, achieve and trade. This scheme is also very important. PAT scheme, perform, achieve, trade. This is related to large industry scheme, right? Large industry scheme, PAT scheme. This is implemented by B, Bureau of Energy Efficiency. What is this PAT scheme about? Perform, achieve, trade means industries are given a target, right, to reduce emissions. So industries have to reduce their emissions. If there is any one industry which has reduced emissions more than the target, then that extra reduction in emissions, it can sell to other companies which could not meet their target. Here trading of carbon emissions takes place. This is related to PAT scheme, right? I hope this was covered in environment for you guys. If it's not covered, just go to Google and search it, you will get it, right? So second scheme is PAT scheme, implemented by Bureau of Energy Efficiency. Third scheme is PM Ujala program, right? Ujala, PM Ujala program. Now this is related to LED lights, right? This is related to promoting the usage of LED lights, which are more energy efficient, right? So this is the third scheme, PM Ujala program related to LEDs. And fourth scheme is Eco Nivas Samhita. Eco Nivas Samhita. Eco Nivas Samhita means, as the name itself says, Nivas. Nivas means residency. So this is related to building codes for residential buildings. Building code, that means in a particular area to construct one's own house, particular standards have to be there. So eco-friendly standards are being added to the building codes for residential buildings, right? So that is called Eco Nivas Samhita. Just find out which ministry is implementing it, right? This is basically, just find it out, guys. And the next thing is star rating program by BEE, right? Star rating program by BEE. Eco Nivas Samhita is also by Ministry of Power only, right? So just get to know the details of that scheme. And next is star rating program by BEE. We have already discussed this in the previous crash course classes, right? Just go through the notes. And the sixth one is FAME, FAME scheme. FAME, faster adoption and manufacturing of electric vehicles. FAME, FAME scheme, right? So this is about promoting the manufacturing and usage of electric vehicles. Why? Electric vehicles are more energy efficient than the conventional vehicles which we use, right? So there is a scheme for electric vehicles also, that is FAME scheme, FAME. Now find out which ministry is implementing this. Ministry of Power is not implementing this. Ministry of Environment is also not implementing this, right? So this is one scheme where they can ask us, right? So find out which ministry is implementing it. So these are some schemes, guys, which this particular report has identified, right? Now, because such a report by a government agency mentioned about these schemes, it's better if we focus on these schemes, right? There are a number of schemes about energy efficiency. At least if we are thorough with these 6 to 7 schemes, it will be useful for us. And the report also says India is the third largest energy consumer. India is the third largest energy consumer in the world after US and China. After US and China, we are the third largest consumer of energy in the world. And the report also says that after evaluating all these schemes in the year 2018-19, the report says overall, if we see, there are around 10% electrical savings. By implementing all these schemes, the government was successful in reducing the electricity consumption by 10%, guys. So if we could not remember the 10%, at least we should remember there was some positive outcome out of implementing these schemes, right? So this report gives a positive outcome about these government schemes, that consumption was reduced. At least that we have to remember. And which was the area where most of the savings took place? It is the industries area. We have discussed about PAT scheme, right? Perform, achieve, trade scheme. Now that was the scheme which gave good results. Out of the savings, 60% savings came from PAT scheme related to large industries, right? And the second important scheme was Ujala scheme, which was related to LEDs. These two schemes were hugely successful in reducing the electricity consumption, especially the PAT scheme, guys, right? We have to know. So PAT scheme implemented by Bureau of Energy Efficiency, Ministry of Power, related to large industries. For further details, please refer your notes. And also, there is another important scheme that is implemented by Bureau of Energy Efficiency. It's an action plan. Its name is Unnati, U-N-N-A-T-E-E, right? U-N-N-A-T-E-E, Unnati. Unnati means, the full form is Unlocking National Energy Efficiency Portal Strategy, right? Unlocking National Energy Efficiency Portal. So this is Unnati. This is basically a strategic plan by Bureau of Energy Efficiency. Just we have to remember, okay, Unnati, it's related to energy efficiency. And which is the organization that takes about energy efficiency? Bureau of Energy Efficiency, right? So at least this we have to remember with respect to prelims, right? If there is an option saying Unnati that is related to energy efficiency being implemented by some XYZ agency, we should be in a position to eliminate that option, right? If not completely remember all this. So this is about impact of energy efficiency measures report, guys. All the information, right? NMEEE, PAT scheme, Ujala program, Eco Niwas Samhita, star rating program by B, FAME scheme, right? All these schemes, just have a look. So the third topic is RHT14 and RHT18. RHT14 and RHT18. What are these RHT14 and 18? These are basically gene variants of wheat crop. Gene varieties of wheat crop. These are two gene varieties of wheat crop. Now, why are they important for us? They are important because this particular gene variety wheat crop reduces crop residue burning, right? One of the issue you might have studied in environment is in the states of Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, and also some parts of Rajasthan, after wheat crop is harvested, some leftovers of wheat plant will stay, right? So rather than removing those wheat stalks, they are called stalks, guys, the leftover parts of the wheat crop, right? So either they can be removed by using the labor or they can be simply burnt away. So to reduce the labor cost, to save some money, what farmers do is, rather than manually removing that leftover wheat stalks, they simply burn it. So because of burning like that, pollution is increasing in the national capital region, in the Delhi, right? So one of the important reason for increasing pollution in Delhi NCR region is stubble burning by the farmers, especially in the states of Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh and Rajasthan, right? So to prevent this, to stop this, a new gene variety of wheat was discovered. This is called RHT14 and RHT18, right? They are called dwarfing genes. Dwarfing means making them shorter, right? Dwarfing genes. Now the two advantages of this is it reduces crop residue burning. It reduces crop residue burning. And the second thing is deeper sowing of wheat seeds is possible. So wheat seeds can be sown deep into the soil, right? That is also an advantage. How is this advantage? Now, as we are able to deeply sow the wheat seeds, we can effectively use the soil moisture as a source of water. Previously, irrigation has to be done, but now with the capacity or ability to sow these wheat seeds deep into the soil, even that moisture which is trapped inside the soil also can be effectively used, right? So these are the two advantages related to wheat crop. And this was developed by Agharkar Research Institute under Department of Science and Technology, right? So this is RHT14 and RHT18 genes, guys. So there can be a question saying RHT 14 and 18 recently seen in news related to. That is related to wheat crop gene varieties. That we have to know. And some benefits out of it. Crop residue burning is reducing and deeper sowing of seeds is possible, right? So this is about that topic. Now the fourth topic is State of World Forests Report 2020. Now there was a World Forest Report, right? Of World Forests Report 2020. So there was a World Forest Report published by UNEP, United Nations Environment Program, and FAO, Food and Agricultural Organization, right? UNEP and FAO together have published this State of World Forests Report 2020. This much is important for prelims, right? Further details, if you want to know, just go to this report. It's available in the net, right? But for prelims, we have to know which report, which organization, right? If any important findings are there, those we have to take care or note down, right? Similarly, UNEP and FAO are publishing World Forest Report. Similarly, in our country also, status of a State of Forest Report is published, right? Every 2 years, a particular organization publishes India's State of Forest Report, right? That organization is Forest Survey of India. So Forest Survey of India, which is a body under Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, this organization, Forest Survey of India, publishes India's State of Forests Report. Every 2 years once, that means biennially, BIENNIANLY, biennially, every 2 years once, this organization publishes India's State of Forest Report, guys, right? So one new thing was done in the recent forest survey. Just find about that. What was that one new thing? That one new thing is related to biodiversity. So just find out what is that one new special thing in the forest report, recent forest report, right? So this is about State of World Forest Report. And the last topic of environment is direct seeding of rice. Direct seeding of rice, right? So what is this direct seeding of rice? So to understand this direct seeding of rice, first we have to understand presently how rice is cultivated, right? Presently, rice plants are germinated in a nursery, right? Separately in a nursery, the rice plants are allowed to grow and that plant is transplanted from nursery to the soil. So rice seeds are not directly sown in the soil, right? They are transplanted in, they are first of all grown in the nursery, and from the nursery, they are transplanted to the soil, right? You might have seen in many movies or even in some documentaries, the laborers transplanting the rice saplings in the soil. In the soil that is fully filled with water, you can see farmers planting these rice saplings in the soil, right? One by one. So that is the way how rice is cultivated. But for that, so much of water is being wasted, right? So much of water is being wasted. Now, why is that method followed by the farmers? That method is followed by the farmers because first, they will be completely filling the soil with water. They'll do that to ensure only rice plant will grow and no other weed plants will grow, right? No other waste plants will grow. To make that happen, first they will fill the entire soil with water and then they will grow this rice plant separately, and then after it reaches some height, then they'll transplant into the water. This happens. So water wastage is so much in this conventional method that is being followed by farmer. And also labor cost also increases for the farmer, right? Transplanting these saplings from nursery to the soil requires labor. So labor cost is also involved. Now states like Punjab and Haryana are starting a new method called direct seeding of rice. That means rather than transplanting them from nursery to the soil, directly they will sow the seeds in the soil itself, right? Directly they will sow the seeds in the soil itself. By doing this way, water wastage can be reduced, labor cost can be reduced. So this is about direct seeding of rice. In the news, in the last week, guys. That's why I've picked this topic. At least we have to know what is direct seeding of rice, right? So these are some environment topics. So now we'll go to the governance topics. In the governance topics, Shekatkar committee is very important. Shekatkar, SHEKATTKR, Shekatkar committee. So this committee is important because this is related to border infrastructure, right? This is related to border infrastructure. Now, border infrastructure is very important because recently we have seen the China-India border standoff, right? One of the important reason for China-India border standoff was India improving its border infrastructure near the LAC. It was one of the reason why border standoff happened between India and China, right? If you are going through the newspapers daily, you can catch this point. So that's why border infrastructure is important for us, right? China-India issue is important, but issues that are surrounding this China-India issue are also equally important for us, right? So border infrastructure is important, and this Shekatkar committee is important. What did this, why is this committee very much important is, 3 of its recommendations were taken seriously by the government and have been implemented. The recommendations. First recommendation is speeding up the road construction in the border areas, right? Speeding up the road construction in the border areas. That was one of the recommendation. Second recommendation was socio-economic development of the border areas. Just imagine those living in the border areas, right? They are more vulnerable. They are more marginalized, right? They live in remote areas. So their socio-economic development is also important for us, right? Only then inclusive development is possible. So that was also a recommendation by Shekatkar committee. And the third recommendation was go for public-private partnerships in improving border infrastructure, right? Go for public-private partnerships for improving border infrastructure. These are the 3 suggestions that were given by Shekatkar committee and that were also implemented by the government, right? So this is important, guys. And also find out different models under the public-private partnership model, right? Under PPP model, there are 4 to 5 models. This is related to economy. Just find each and everything. There is a model called EPC. There is a model called BOT, Build, Operate, Transfer. There is a model called HAM, Hybrid Annuity Model, right? There is also a model called a Swiss Challenge method, right? Swiss Challenge model is also there. So many kinds of public-private partnerships are there. It's important for us because the present government is so much pushing towards public-private partnership, guys, right? That's why one topic you can expect. For example, if they ask what is hybrid annuity model, we need to at least know in order to eliminate the options, right? So find about PPPs. So this is about Shekatkar committee. It's related to border infrastructure. And there is an organization called Border Roads Organization, BRO. This falls under Ministry of Defense, right? This organization is responsible for road construction in the border areas, for improving the road infrastructure in the border areas, right? So these are some points we have to know with respect to border infrastructure, right? We have discussed another committee related to Chief of Defense Staff 2 days back, right? That was related to Naresh Chandra committee and Kargil Review Committee. Shekatkar committee is related to border infrastructure, right? Just keep revising these names, guys. So the second topic is plea bargaining. Plea, P-L-E-A, plea bargaining. Plea bargaining. This is also a topic. This was there in Sunday's Hindu newspaper. A big article was there about plea bargaining in Sunday's Hindu newspaper. Now this is important because this is related to Tablighi Jamaat incident, right? This is related to Tablighi Jamaat issue. Tablighi Jamaat issue, I suppose everyone knows about that issue, right? So this plea bargaining was related to that issue. So what is plea bargaining? Plea bargaining means, example, assume a person is charged with some criminal offense, right? It's not yet proved, but he is an accused of a criminal offense. Now, under the plea bargaining, that accused person can by himself voluntarily negotiate with the prosecutor and agree that he only has done that mistake, right? Even before the prosecution, investigation, trial by the court, this is the natural way how the things go. Rather than that method, directly the person who is accused can himself accept in front of the prosecutor that he has done the crime. By this way, lesser punishment is given to him. This is called plea bargaining. So bargaining means negotiating, right? Rather than going by the natural way how the investigation, prosecution and the trial goes, under plea bargaining, the accused person will try to negotiate and bargain with the prosecution, right? So the negotiations go in such a way that if the accused himself agrees that he has done the mistake, then lesser punishment will be given to him, right? This is called plea bargaining. This is a very famous model in United States, guys, right? This is a very famous model in United States criminal justice system. Does it exist in India or not? Yes, it exists in India. This plea bargaining was also used by the Tablighi Jamaat people, right? What is the Tablighi Jamaat people? How did they use the plea bargaining? Just find it out in Sunday Sindhu newspaper, or in the net also you can get it, right? So this model of plea bargaining was introduced in India in the year 2006, right? So this plea bargaining exists in India, that we have to know. However, not for all cases you can use this plea bargaining. Just imagine a murder has been committed, or just imagine a rape has been committed. Just imagine a child under 14 years was molested. For such cases, we cannot allow this plea bargaining, right? So some cases are out of the purview of plea bargaining, right? Out of the purview of plea bargaining. They are any crimes that involve death sentence, any crimes that involve life sentence above 7 years, right? For such serious offenses, plea bargaining is not applicable, right? So we should know plea bargaining is not applicable for all the cases. Some cases are out of the purview of plea bargaining. And this plea bargaining was also recommended by Justice Malimath Committee also. Malimath Committee, this might have been covered for you in governance. Malimath Committee is related to criminal justice reforms, right? This is related to criminal justice reforms. Even this Malimath Committee also recommended for plea bargaining, right? So what are the benefits of this plea bargaining? Some benefits are speedy trial takes place, right? Speedy justice is possible. Litigation cost will reduce. People need not roam around the courts for justice, right? In a speedy way, we can get the justice. Under trials can be reduced in the prisons. What are under trials? Under trials means they are still under the trial. That means they are accused, but still not proven guilty. But still they are kept in the prisons. These people are called under trials. Under trials can be reduced. Pendency in the cases also can be reduced, right? We can solve cases fastly by plea bargaining, by using the plea bargaining, right? So this is about plea bargaining, guys. So plea bargaining means person charged with criminal offense, he tries to negotiate with the prosecution, right? This is famous in US criminal justice system. This also exists in India, was introduced in the year 2006, right? Lesser punishment is given if he voluntarily accepts that he has committed the crime before the trial goes. And some cases are kept outside the purview of this plea bargaining. Justice Malimath Committee also recommended this. This is related to Tablighi Jamaats. Just go through that issue, and some benefits also we have discussed, right? So the last topic for today is TRIPS and Doha Declaration. What is TRIPS agreement and what is Doha Declaration? This we have to know, because this TRIPS and Doha Declaration was in the news during this COVID pandemic times. That's why we have to know. So first of all, we'll try to tackle what is TRIPS agreement. So TRIPS agreement means it's basically related to intellectual properties, right? This agreement is related to intellectual properties. Now, why is this important? Because this agreement talks about protection of patents, right? protection of patents in WTO member countries. All the countries which are members of World Trade Organization, they have to maintain some minimum standards and rules for protecting the patents, right? For that, this TRIPS agreement was brought. So this is related to intellectual properties. That is the first point we have to know. So what all intellectual properties are covered under this TRIPS? That is also important. Firstly, copyrights, trademarks, geographical indicators, industrial designs, trade secrets, plant varieties, patents, all these are protected by this TRIPS agreement, right? What is the need of protecting all this? Only when we protect all this, we can promote innovation, right? Only when we assure someone that their patents will be protected, only then they'll try to come up with new innovation, right? So for promoting innovation and also for promoting ease of doing business, just imagine a company has trade secrets. A company has some secrets. And if the country is not in a position to protect those trade secrets, then no company will be willing to start its production in our country, right? So for ease of doing business and also for promoting innovation, this TRIPS agreement is very much required, right? So all the things which we have discussed fall under this TRIPS agreement. It is basically a WTO agreement. That also we have to know. World Trade Organization agreement, which came into force in 1995, right? So this is about TRIPS agreement. Now, what is the issue with this TRIPS agreement? Just imagine the least developed countries and the developing countries like India. The issue here is, if we give patents to individuals, assume an individual has come up with a patent for a drug, right? Now that drug is very much required in India, especially for the poor people. Then what should be the scenario, right? That particular person who has the patent over the drug will charge huge amount of money. But just imagine the accessibility and affordability of those drugs by the poor people, right? So here a trade-off is there. On one side, patent protection. On the other side, socio-economic development of the poor, right? So for example, take the case of tuberculosis. Highest number of cases of tuberculosis are in India. Just imagine now a person has come up with some very important drug related to TB, but he has patented it, right? Now access to the drug is limited. What cost he charges, for that only we have to buy. But country like India, which has huge number of TB cases, and especially poor people who are more vulnerable to TB, can they afford those medicines? No, right? So for that, a declaration was brought that is called Doha Declaration, right? So this Doha Declaration is about TRIPS and public health. Doha Declaration is about TRIPS and public health. This was done in the year 2001. This was done in the year 2001. So this is about some flexibilities given to the developing and the least developed countries, right? Some relaxations were given to developing countries and the least developed countries for public interest. That means countries like India can compromise with patent protection for public interest, right? If there is any one such drug which is very useful for the people, but it was patented by someone, then India can take away that patent and use that drug, right? So such kind of flexibilities were given under this Doha Declaration on TRIPS and public health, right? So in this context, we have to know about compulsory licensing, guys. What is this compulsory licensing? So compulsory licensing means though patent exists, the government can give license to a third party or a government agency to manufacture that drug, right? This is called compulsory licensing. Compulsory licensing means even though a person has a patent over a drug, the government of India can order or give license to a third party other than the patent person to manufacture the same drug, right? This is called compulsory licensing. Hope this is clear to everyone about compulsory licensing, right? So this is about TRIPS and Doha Declaration. It's important because in this COVID pandemic, just imagine different companies are coming up with different drugs, right? So this is very much useful or essential for people, for all the countries, especially for countries like LDCs and developing countries like India. So if patents are done, then public health will be at risk. So TRIPS agreement related to intellectual properties, all kind of things, geographical indicators, copyrights, trademarks, all are included in this TRIPS. This is under WTO, adopted in 1995, and Doha Declaration on TRIPS and public health in the year 2001. Flexibilities were given, right, for balancing patents and public interest. Compulsory licensing, that term also we have to know. First thing is, there was a mentioning about floor test in Rajasthan state, right? The chief minister has gone to the governor and there are chances of floor test. So just see what is this floor test and how is it related to Article 74 and 75, right? So that is important. And the second is, there's an article about tribals of Odisha. Tribals of Odisha, there was an article saying that they are very much safe as they are living in remote areas. They are very much safe from this COVID pandemic, right? In this context, we have to know 2 months back, there were some rituals done by Arunachal Pradesh tribals. There were some rituals, RITUALS, rituals done by Arunachal Pradesh tribals related to self-isolation, right? They are related to Corona. So the tribals in Arunachal Pradesh, they have done some self-isolation rituals. So those tribes' names and those rituals are very much important, right? A question can come from there. And Bagjan site in Assam, where the gas leak has happened, right? So that site's name is important. Tinsukia district, Bagjan site. This is there in Assam. And it's 75 years for United Nations. So a declaration was passed yesterday. 75 years for UN declaration was passed. So the declaration was important. Any important terms mentioned in that declaration, they are important for us. Just go through them. And this year's declaration is important because India is pushing for UNSC reforms from many years, but the UNSC reforms issue was not that much highlighted in this 75 years declaration. So that's why this is important for us. And LAC, guys, LAC is in news from 1.5 months, right? Just get to know all possible details about LAC, right? LAC can be divided into Western, Middle and Eastern parts, right? Western LAC, Middle LAC, Eastern LAC. Western LAC, whether China and India are agreeing or not. What is McDonald line? What is Johnson line? Right? What is McMahon line in the Arunachal Pradesh? Just get to know and be thorough in all these topics. And extrajudicial killings were also there in the news. So just try to find out police reforms and extrajudicial killings. Any committees which have recommended any statements about extrajudicial killings and all those things. And Malabar exercise was in the news, right? Malabar exercise. So this Malabar exercise, what countries are there? Right? US, Japan and India are there. They're trying to welcome Australia. So in which year did it start? It started in the year 1992 as a bilateral exercise between US and India. In 2015, Japan was added. Now they are trying to add Australia also, right? These details we have to know with respect to prelims. And what is squad grouping? What countries are there in this squad grouping, right? So that is important. Plan, PLAN. This was also in today's editorial. Just go through it.